So this is great that you bring this up, because I wanted to ask you, in addition to traditional book publicity, and you can talk a little bit about what's being done in that arena, but social media. This is I have a friend who's an author, and we were just talking the other day, and she said one of the best ways these days for authors to get the word out is to work with these book clubs that are all over, online book clubs. So social media. How are you, Karen, utilizing social media, and how are you supplementing traditional outreach to the readership that you want, and how do you think about this, and where are you going, and anything interesting or unique that you're doing with the book?
Well, one thing I am doing is I'm offering to people who are in book clubs in the tri-state area where we are now in New York. I say, if you're in a book club, I'll actually come to your book club, because I like chatting with people and eating their food. So I'm happy to talk about the process of writing the book. It's not a deep book. It's kind of a fun book, but people are interested in the story. They're interested in how did you, the questions you were just asking, like how did you go about writing this thing? And I've done a couple of those, and that's fun. So that's one thing that I've done that I don't know a lot of people who are doing that. I don't know that much about the traditional marketing efforts, because I wasn't in book publishing and I'd never published a book before. But it seems to me that unless you're like Tom Clancy, nobody, or Twilight, nobody is going to be, and those people don't even need the thing, but it's all over the subway, it's all over the airplane, the this, the that. There's more advertisements for these books. When you walk into the bookstore, they've paid for a huge display of the books, and they hide the new authors, and people have to go on a scavenger hunt. I'm not bitter. People have to go on a scavenger hunt to find Following Polly. They have to be really aggressive. So one of the things that I'm doing is just, I am fairly outgoing, so I do try to keep up with I like Facebook. I don't have 2,000 friends, but I have like 1,000 friends on Facebook, and a lot of them are people that I really do know. Some are people that I don't know, but a lot of them are people I know that I haven't seen for a while, who are excited when they hear that I've written a book, and they say, oh sure, I'll buy it, and I have no idea if I've done my bit. You know what I mean? You can't, not everybody is going to respond to I wrote a book, and I just try to be funny on Facebook because it's fun, and it's also, my book is kind of funny, and I think if they like my voice on Facebook and Twitter, they may enjoy reading what I have to say in the book. I don't do, some people, I get emails from some people every single day on messages, in my book. There are a lot from comedians, like, come to this bar, come to that bar, we're going to be here, and it's too much, it's too aggressive. I would rather read somebody's consistently funny posts, and then when I hear that that person is performing somewhere or writing somewhere, then I make a note of it. But just saying, come see me with somebody that I've never met before, why would I go? So
your writing and your comic life are somewhat intertwined, I would think.
That is where there is some, the audience seems to be very different for a book and for a comedy club.
But you write your own material?
I do. I write my own.
What's harder, writing a book or writing the material for your act?
I've been so lame about writing my act because I've been doing the book, so I guess writing the act because I haven't done it. So.
All right. Fair enough.
And it's two totally different things. 'Cause it's, in some ways writing a joke is just much more work, because you have to be so careful about every word, because you want to have so few words in a joke, and you have a little bit more leeway when you're writing a character, and you can, it just seems like a little bit more, everything doesn't have to be, every sentence doesn't have to be funny.
And so who's inspired you? What writers have inspired you over the years, or for that matter, what comics have inspired you over the years?
Well, that's a good question. For writers, I would say, we were just talking about this earlier, Susan Isaacs, who I've always enjoyed, and I read her books, when I read this book, Almost Paradise, I think it was her first book when I was in college, and it just had such an impact on me. And then I've read everything she's written. I've always thought of her as like this amazing person, and then I had the opportunity to meet her, so now I feel like, wow, that's so cool. She's kind of inspired me, because it's a little bit the kind of book that I tried to write, funny, character-filled mystery, where the mystery isn't as important as the characters, and I like that aspect of her writing. On any given day, I'll change my favorite writer. You know, I love Curtis Sittenfeld, who wrote Prep. I love that book. I loved her book that was like the takeoff on Laura Bush's life. I thought it was so great. I love that kind of depressed narrator tone that she has. I think it's great, and actually my novel was a little bit like that when I first wrote it, and everybody was like, God, this is awful. She's so depressed. Like, I just don't have the talent that Curtis Sittenfeld has. I'm like, but it works so well for Curtis Sittenfeld, who has like 17 degrees in writing. And so I really like her. I like in writing, it's nice that there's so many great female authors, which I love. Although I'm just thinking right now, I just read The Power of One, like 20 years too late, but I loved it. Did you ever read that book? I'm telling everybody, Power of One, Bryce Courtney. Buy Following Polly, and then Power of One. It's so good, it will change your life.
All right.
Then comics. You know, the comics that inspire me are often comics that nobody's ever heard of, or comics that I have a conversation with, you know, who just say, you know, I really try to just focus on the work. I just, you know, instead of like worrying about the nonsense of show business, which is hideous, they just say, you know, I just want to be funny. I just want to do my thing and be okay. And so that sort of is what inspires me in comedy. I mean, there are people that I think are, so we were talking about Joan Rivers. She inspires me, a woman in this country, in this culture, who's, you know, probably 2 generations of comic before me, to have gone through what she did, and she's just a fighter, and I love that.
She's phenomenal. So you were talking about how you're using social media for the book. What
Right.
about for comedy?
I do it a little bit, but I find it works better for the book almost. I feel for the comedy, it's so saturated with comedians doing. I mean, I don't know if the social media works so much for the comedy. I don't know if it works. I'm not sure. It hasn't. I don't know that it's worked for me, I should say. Okay. It might work for a different kind of comedian. I do a lot of improvisational stuff on stage, and that doesn't work so well on the social media.
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, I hadn't really looked into it, but it makes sense completely. So what kind of advice would you give for aspiring writers? So well, here you get to pick. You get to give advice now to either an aspiring writer, comic, or a lawyer. Okay.
Well, lawyer, I would just say, like, really know what being a lawyer is. My husband is a lawyer, and he loves it more than anything. Okay. So it's not that everybody in law hates it, but I think people have expectations. You know, I think if you want to make a lot of money, I don't know, you know, some people think that that's the way to go. I think there are other ways to make a lot of money. People say, I want to be in court all the time. Make sure you go in then to become a prosecutor or a defense attorney. Don't go into corporate litigation. You'll never be in court. You'll be writing, you know, briefs, or at most. So I'd say learn what you're doing, know what it is. For comics and writers, I would say patience is really important. You really have to know that it's, you know, everything is like a little step. You know, it's not, you know, in that movie with Sally Field, Punchline, like, she does comedy 3 times and they're like, you're a star. Like, it just doesn't happen like that. Even now you hear of people where they're like, where did this comedian come from? Overnight, he's a success. Like, and you're like, no, that person has been working for 20 years. You've just never heard of him, you know. And writing, I think it's also what I was saying earlier, like, don't say, I'm going to write, just like I'm not going to, you know, don't say, I'm going to become a comedy star. I'm going to write the big novel. You know, I'm going to go up tonight and be funny. I'm going to go up tonight and tell some jokes, and hopefully they'll work. I'm going to write down, you know, this part of my story is what I'm going to write tonight for the novel. So I think not making everything big is really, and just focusing on what you can do in the moment, I think is a way to not frustrate yourself.
Oh, that's very smart. So any parting words on balancing your life or anything else you want to pontificate on?
I do think balancing is really important. I always say that I spend time with my kids to run away from work, and I work to run away from my kids.
It's a good thing.
I do think it's nice, because it's, you know,
his
You know,
perspective.
yeah,
Right.
it is nice. I think I couldn't do just being the mom thing. I wouldn't, that's not for me. It would be too hard. I need a break. And doing the just work would be, I think I'd be lonely if I just worked. So.
Well, your family, so lucky to have you, and we're really lucky, and so thank you so much for joining us. Triple Insight from Karen Bergreen. Bergreen? What is
Bergreen.
it? Bergreen, okay. And Following Polly is the book. Karen, thank you so much for joining us at CinemaDMA.
Thank you.